They can throw me out, but they'll have to drag that soldier out over my dead body. Those were the last words I spoke before losing everything I'd worked for. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and 6 years of blood, sweat, and tears vanished the moment I refused to kick out a Marine and his service dog. I never imagined that standing up for what's right would cost me my career. But I also never imagined what would happen next. 4 military vehicles surrounding my former workplace, a decorated colonel walking through those doors, and a twist of fate that would change not just my life, but the lives of countless veterans across the country. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it all started. On that crisp Tuesday morning that began like any other and ended with the ground shaking beneath my feet. At 37, I managed the Sunrise Café in Riverside, North Carolina, just a stone's throw from Camp Bridgewater, one of the biggest Marine bases on the East Coast. Our little town looked like it jumped straight out of an old postcard. Magnolia trees lining every street, flags waving from front porches, and a general store that still sold penny candy in glass jars. The Sunrise wasn't fancy. We didn't serve complicated drinks with names longer than sentences. What we offered was simple: strong coffee, warm smiles, and a place where anyone could feel at home. Behind our counter hung a bulletin board covered in deployment photos, thank you notes, and announcements for military family events. That board told our real story better than any mission statement ever could. I didn't just manage the cafe, I breathed life into it. Every regular had their own story, and I made it my business to know them. There was Marcus, who hadn't missed his 6 a.m. coffee since returning from Afghanistan. Linda, an Army nurse who always ordered chamomile tea because caffeine made her hands shake after 3 tours in Iraq. And old Thomas, a Korean war vet who'd sit in the corner booth every morning, nursing the same cup for hours while reading his newspaper. Every Tuesday at 8:30 sharp, something special happened at the Sunrise. We called it Warriors Welcome, an hour where veterans could gather, share stories, or just sit in comfortable silence. It started small, with just my father-in-law James, a retired Navy chief, a handful of his buddies, and me keeping the coffee flowing. Over time, our little gathering grew into something bigger, something that mattered. You see, I understood these warriors in a way most people couldn't. My husband, Captain David Mitchell, never made it home from his last deployment to Afghanistan. 7 years ago, an IED took him from me and our daughter Emma. His photo hung above our register, not in uniform, but wearing his favorite baseball cap, holding Emma on his shoulders outside the cafe. It was taken 3 weeks before he left. 3 weeks before everything changed. I never remarried. Instead, I poured everything into the Sunrise, transforming my grief into something useful. The cafe became my mission, my way of serving those who served. When a young Marine came in with hollow eyes and shaking hands, I knew to give him the booth in the back, where he could see all the exits. When a female veteran flinched at loud noises, I'd quietly turn down the music. These weren't things you learned from a manual. They came from watching, caring, and remembering what it felt like to be broken. The locals noticed. Veterans drove from 3 towns over just for our Tuesday gatherings. The mayor's wife volunteered to bake fresh pastries every week. Even the tough-as-nails sheriff would tip his hat when he walked by, muttering something about good people doing good work. But I never sought recognition. Every cup poured, every hand shaken, every welcome home whispered to a returning soldier. These were small repayments on a debt I could never fully settle. My David died protecting strangers in a country thousands of miles away. The least I could do was protect his brothers and sisters here at home. Something was building in our little cafe, something powerful and unspoken. We'd created more than a business. We'd built a sanctuary. And on that particular Tuesday morning, as autumn light filtered through our windows and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air, I had no idea that sanctuary was about to be tested. The first sign of trouble walked through our door at 8:45, right in the middle of Warriors Welcome. But the real story, the one that would ripple out from our small town all the way to the Pentagon, began with a man, a dog, and a choice that would cost me everything before giving me more than I ever imagined. The bell above our door chimed softly, a sound I'd heard thousands of times. But something in the air shifted when Marcus Chen walked in with Ranger by his side. Marcus was newer to our group, late 40s, former Marine Special Operations, with eyes that had seen too much. Ranger, his German Shepherd Lab mix, wore a bright red vest clearly marked, "Service Dog Do Not Pet." The dog never left Marcus's side, not even for a second. I waved them toward their usual spot. "Corner table's all yours, Marcus." He nodded, managing a small smile. "Thanks, Sarah." That's when the atmosphere changed. The door burst open, and in walked someone I'd never seen before. A man in a pressed suit, carrying a clipboard like a weapon. His name tag read, "Robert Fitzgerald, State Health Department." My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Good morning, how can I help you?" "Routine inspection," he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Unscheduled." He moved through my café like he owned it, running his finger along surfaces, peering into refrigerators, checking dates on milk cartons. The veterans at Warriors Welcome grew quiet, that familiar tension filling the room, the kind that comes when uniformed authority shows up unexpectedly. Then Fitzgerald saw Ranger. He froze mid-step, his face twisting with disgust. "That animal is a health code violation. No dogs where food is served. Period." The cafe went silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward us. I stepped out from behind the counter, keeping my movements calm. "Sir, that's a registered service dog. Federal law protects his right to be here." Fitzgerald's face reddened. "I don't care what costume you put on it. Dogs carry diseases, shed fur, drool. Either that mutt goes, or I shut this place down. Your choice." Marcus's hands gripped his coffee mug so tight I thought it might shatter. Ranger, sensing his handler's distress, pressed closer to Marcus's leg. The room felt like a powder keg, and Fitzgerald had just lit a match. But what happened next, what sealed my fate, wasn't planned. It came from somewhere deeper than thought, older than reason. "That mutt helps a Marine who gave everything for our country," I said, my voice carrying across the silent cafe. "If you want to remove him, you'll have to go through me first." The inspector's eyes narrowed to slits, and that's when I noticed her, Patricia Ung, district manager for our parent company, standing in the doorway. She must have arrived for her monthly visit at the worst possible moment. Her expression told me everything I needed to know. Patricia stepped forward, her heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. "Ms. Mitchell, did you just refuse a direct order from a state health inspector?" My throat went dry, but I held my ground. "I refuse to humiliate a veteran and his service animal." "Then you're terminated. Effective immediately. Clear out your things." The words hit like physical blows, but I didn't cry. I couldn't. Not in front of my warriors. With trembling hands, I untied my apron, folded it carefully, and placed it on the counter. I looked at Jenny, our youngest barista, and whispered, "Make sure everyone gets their refills." As I walked toward the door, I caught Marcus's eye. The guilt on his face nearly broke me. "This isn't your fault," I mouthed. Outside, the morning sun felt too bright, too normal for what had just happened. I'd lost more than a job. I'd lost my purpose, my connection to David's memory, my way of serving those who'd served. What I didn't know was that Jenny had been recording the whole confrontation on her phone. Within an hour, that video would spread across social media like wildfire. And somewhere on Camp Bridgewater, in an office lined with medals and commendations, Colonel James Harrison would watch that footage and make a decision that would change everything. But in that moment, standing in the parking lot with my box of personal belongings, I felt only the weight of loss. 6 years of building something beautiful, destroyed in 6 minutes, all because I wouldn't abandon one of our own. The drive home blurred past my windows. I sat in my truck outside my house for 20 minutes, engine off, keys heavy in my hand. How would I explain this to Emma? How could I face the veterans who depended on our Tuesday gatherings? The sunrise wasn't just my job. It was my lifeline, my purpose, my way of keeping David's spirit alive. My phone buzzed incessantly, but I couldn't bring myself to look. Probably Jenny, or maybe some of the regulars who'd witnessed my professional execution. I wasn't ready for their sympathy or their anger. I just needed to breathe. But then something strange happened. As I sat there, staring at nothing, I heard it. A low rumble that seemed to shake the very air. It grew louder, more distinct. The sound of heavy engines, multiple vehicles moving in formation. My military spouse instincts kicked in. I knew that sound. I finally looked at my phone. 47 missed calls, hundreds of text messages, and one that made my blood run cold. Sarah, this is Colonel Harrison from Camp Bridgewater. Please call immediately. This is not a request. I dialed with shaking fingers. He answered on the first ring. Ms. Mitchell, I've seen the video. Where are you right now? Home, sir. Stay there. We're 3 minutes out. We're? Sir, I don't understand. You stood up for one of mine. Now it's our turn. The line went dead. Through my windshield, I watched 4 military Humvees turn onto my quiet street. Neighbors emerged from their houses. Dogs barked, children pointed. The vehicles pulled up in perfect formation, and out stepped Colonel James Harrison in full dress blues, his chest gleaming with ribbons and medals. Behind him, 24 Marines filed out in pristine uniforms. They formed ranks on my front lawn with military precision. Mrs. Patterson from next door nearly dropped her gardening shears. Colonel Harrison approached my truck and opened my door. Ms. Mitchell, would you please come with us? Sir, where are we going? His weathered face cracked the slightest smile. To fix an injustice, and then, if you're willing, to offer you a real mission. I stepped out on unsteady legs. I don't understand. Marcus Chen saved my life in Fallujah, he said simply. Carried me 2 miles through hostile territory with 3 bullets in his back. That man and his dog aren't just welcome in any establishment. They're heroes. And you, ma'am, just proved you understand what that means. We drove back through town in a convoy that stopped traffic. People lined the sidewalks, some filming, others saluting. When we turned into the Sunrise Cafe parking lot, I gasped. The place was surrounded by military vehicles. Marines stood at attention by the entrance. And there, in the doorway, stood Robert Fitzgerald, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Colonel Harrison stepped out first, his boots striking pavement with purpose. He walked straight past the health inspector, without acknowledgement, and entered my former workplace. I followed, my heart hammering. Inside, Patricia Ung pressed herself against the pastry case, her face drained of color. The colonel surveyed the room, his gaze stopping on Marcus, who slowly stood. They exchanged a look that carried years of shared history, pain, and brotherhood. Harrison snapped a crisp salute. Marcus returned it, tears streaming down his weathered face. Then the colonel turned to the room. This establishment has been more than a cafe. It's been a lifeline for those who've served. Ms. Mitchell understood what politicians and bureaucrats often forget, that honor isn't just about medals and ceremonies. It's about daily acts of dignity. He faced Patricia. You terminated someone for upholding the very values this nation claims to cherish. That decision will be reviewed at the highest levels. She opened her mouth, closed it, and said nothing. 2 Marines efficiently removed the corporate logo from the wall, folding it with the same care they'd give a flag. Another replaced our hours sign with a new one. Sarah's Sanctuary, where heroes are always welcome. But Harrison wasn't done. He turned to me, and his next words changed my life forever. Ms. Mitchell, Camp Bridgewater is launching a revolutionary veteran support program. We need someone to lead it, someone who understands that healing happens in small moments, over coffee and conversation, someone who sees the person, not just the uniform. The room held its breath. I looked around at the faces I'd served for years. Marcus with Ranger steady at his side, Thomas in his corner booth, Linda clutching her tea with trembling hands. These weren't just customers. They were family. What exactly are you asking me to do? I managed. Build something bigger than a cafe. Create a model that can be replicated on every base in America. Show the world that supporting veterans isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistent, daily compassion. Jenny started crying. Marcus sat down hard, Ranger immediately pressing against him. And somewhere, I swear I felt David smiling. When do I start? I whispered. The colonel's rare smile widened. How about now? What followed was a whirlwind I never saw coming. Within days, the story went national. News crews descended on Riverside. The video Jenny captured had millions of views. Letters poured in from veterans across the country, sharing their own stories of discrimination, of being made to feel like burdens instead of heroes. But I didn't have time to process the fame. Colonel Harrison wasn't kidding about starting immediately. The next morning, I drove through Camp Bridgewater's gates as an official employee for the first time. The guards saluted. Me, a civilian, a widow, a failed cafe manager. The Veteran Integration and Wellness Center was housed in a building that had seen better days. Paint peeled from walls, fluorescent lights flickered, and boxes of donated supplies sat gathering dust. A few young staffers looked up nervously as I entered. It's not much, Harrison admitted. Budget constraints, bureaucracy, the usual excuses. But I've seen what you can do with limited resources. I walked through the space slowly, already envisioning possibilities. That corner could hold comfortable chairs for group sessions. The main room had beautiful natural light, perfect for art therapy. The small kitchen needed work, but it could become the heart of the operation. I'll need some things, I said. First, a real coffee maker, not that government-issue swamp water machine. Second, dogs are welcome. All of them. Third, we run this like a home, not a hospital. Done, Harrison said without hesitation. That first week, only a handful of veterans showed up. They came suspicious, defensive, expecting another program that would fail them. I didn't push. I made coffee, learned names, and waited. Slowly, word spread. The woman from the video was here. The one who stood up to the inspector. The one who got fired for doing what was right. Marcus was one of my first regulars, of course. I'm sorry, he said on his third visit. You lost your job because of me. No, I corrected firmly. I lost a job, but I found a mission. Week by week, our numbers grew. Young Marines fresh from deployment. Vietnam veterans who'd given up on the system decades ago. Female soldiers who'd been told their trauma didn't count. They all found their way to us, drawn by something more powerful than any advertising campaign, authentic understanding. I implemented simple changes that made profound differences. We kept lights dimmer for those with sensitivities. Chairs were arranged so no one had their back to a door. We had quiet rooms for when the main area felt overwhelming. And yes, we had the best coffee machine money could buy, funded by an anonymous donor who turned out to be Thomas from the corner booth. One day, a young woman appeared at our door. Ashley Rivera, 24, burn scars covering her neck and arms. She stood frozen at the entrance, a golden retriever puppy beside her. Is it okay? She asked, gesturing to the dog. He's in training to be my service animal. More than okay? I said gently. What's his name? Hope, she whispered, because that's what I'm trying to find again. Ashley became one of our most dedicated members. She never spoke in group sessions at first, but she showed up. She helped organize supplies. She made sure newer veterans felt welcomed. And slowly, surrounded by others who understood, she began to heal. 3 months into the program, I received an unexpected visit. A man in a gray suit, carrying himself with military bearing despite his civilian clothes. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. You don't remember me, he said softly. I came to your cafe 8 years ago, just discharged, medical reasons. PTSD before we really called it that. You served me coffee and told me about your Tuesday group. I was too scared to come back. He pulled out a business card. Dr. Michael Reeves, Deputy Director, Veterans Affairs. My knees nearly buckled. I watched your video, he continued. Saw what you sacrificed. Then I heard about what you're building here. Ms. Mitchell, we need to talk about making this national. The meeting that followed changed everything. Within weeks, funding appeared. Not just government money, private donations from veterans who'd made it, corporations wanting to give back, small-town fundraisers from places I'd never heard of. The rundown building transformed. We added therapy rooms, a full kitchen, a gym designed specifically for those with combat injuries. But we kept the heart of what worked: connection over coffee, dignity over diagnosis, presence over programs. The day we held our grand reopening, something beautiful happened. Patricia Ung showed up. Not the corporate district manager, but a humbled woman carrying a check from the company. I was wrong, she said simply. What you built at the Sunrise, what you're building here, it matters. This is our apology. I could have been petty, could have turned her away. Instead, I handed her a cup of coffee. Stay for the ceremony, see what you almost destroyed. She stayed. She cried. She finally understood. That afternoon, over 300 people packed our center. Veterans from every generation, families, local civilians who'd supported us from the beginning. Colonel Harrison spoke about courage coming in many forms. Marcus talked about finding hope again. Ashley, in a moment that stunned everyone, stood up and shared her story publicly for the first time. But the surprise that left me speechless came when Harrison called me forward. Sarah Mitchell, your actions reminded us that serving those who serve isn't just military duty, it's human duty. It's my honor to present you with the Civilian Service Medal for distinguished support to veterans. The room erupted. Through my tears, I saw them all: my warriors, my family, my purpose. And just for a moment, I felt David there too, proud of what his sacrifice had inspired. 6 months later, I stood in a conference room at the Pentagon. Yes, the actual Pentagon. Me, a small-town café manager, presenting our model to generals and policymakers. My hands shook, but my voice stayed steady. Connection before correction, I explained. Community before clinical. We don't fix veterans. We remind them they were never broken. Just human beings who've seen too much, carried too much, lost too much. The brass listened. They took notes. And by the end of that day, the Wellness Integration Program was approved for implementation at 20 bases across the country. That night, I stood outside looking at the stars. My phone rang. Jenny from the cafe. Sarah, you need to know something. We never changed the name back. It's still Sarah's Sanctuary. And every Tuesday at 8:30, we hold Warriors Welcome. Your photo's on the wall next to David's. The corporate office doesn't dare complain. I laughed through fresh tears. How's the coffee? Terrible compared to yours. But Marcus and Thomas and Linda, they still come. They're keeping your seat warm for whenever you visit. After everything, the termination, the viral video, the job offer, the medals, the national recognition, that simple gesture meant the most. They'd saved my place, just like I'd tried to save theirs. A year passed. The program expanded to 50 bases. I traveled constantly, training others to replicate what we'd built. But I always returned to Riverside, to the center that started it all. The walls now held hundreds of photos. Veterans who'd found hope, families reconnected, lives rebuilt one cup at a time. Marcus still came every week, though Ranger was graying around the muzzle. Ashley had become a peer counselor, helping other female veterans navigate their trauma. Thomas had passed peacefully in his sleep, but his corner booth at the Sunrise remained reserved in his honor. One quiet afternoon, as I sorted through mail, I found a letter with no return address. Inside, a photo fell out, faded, creased from years of handling. It showed a young Marine in dress blues standing beside a small girl. On the back, in shaky handwriting, "Your dad would be so proud." From one Gold Star family to another. I never found out who sent it, but I framed it and hung it in my office, next to David's picture and the certificate from the Pentagon. Reminders that service comes in many forms, sacrifice echoes through generations, and sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest waves. People often ask if I regret that day, standing up to the inspector, losing my job, watching my life implode in minutes. The answer is always the same. How can you regret doing what's right? That moment of defiance, born from grief and love and stubborn loyalty, had rippled outward in ways I never imagined. Because here's what I learned. Honor isn't grand gestures or patriotic speeches. It's Jenny keeping warriors welcome alive. It's Colonel Harrison driving across town to right a wrong. It's Marcus showing up every week despite his struggles. It's Ashley finding her voice in a room full of understanding strangers. It's refusing to let a veteran and his service dog be humiliated, even when it costs everything. The Sunrise Café still serves mediocre coffee on Tuesday mornings. The veteran wellness centers help thousands find their footing. And somewhere in between, in the space where loss meets purpose, a community discovered that standing up for each other isn't just righteous, it's necessary. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm not a hero. I'm not special. I'm just someone who understood a simple truth. When you've lost someone to service, you spend the rest of your life serving others. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that service changes not just their lives, but yours. Every morning, I still make coffee. I still learn names. I still watch for the signs of invisible wounds. But now, I do it knowing that one moment of courage, one refusal to bow to wrongness, can shake the earth beneath our feet. They can take your job. They can challenge your choices. They can threaten everything you've built. But they can't take your integrity. And sometimes, when you hold on to that integrity with both hands, the universe conspires to transform your loss into something larger than you ever dreamed. Remember this. In a world that often feels too fast, too hard, too broken, the smallest acts of dignity matter most. A cup of coffee for a shaking veteran, a safe space for a service dog, a refusal to let bureaucracy trump humanity. These aren't just nice gestures. They're revolutionary acts. They're how we save each other. They're how we honor those who served. They're how we build a world where no one who sacrificed for others should ever be made to feel small. The ground beneath my feet shook that day, yes. But what rose from that shaking was stronger than what fell. And it all started with 3 simple words. Not on my watch. What started in a small cafe in North Carolina has become something I never imagined. But at its heart, it remains the same. One person refusing to let another person be diminished. One community choosing compassion over compliance. One moment when doing right mattered more than being right. This is my story. But more importantly, it's theirs. The veterans who trusted me with their pain, the community that rallied when injustice showed its face, the Marine who carried his wounded colonel through hell and asked only for the dignity to sit peacefully with his dog. We all have these moments, crossroads where we choose between what's easy and what's right. Mine happened to be caught on video, happened to go viral, happened to change the trajectory of my life. But the choice itself was simple. Stand up or stand aside. I stood up, and in doing so, I discovered that sometimes losing everything is just the universe's way of clearing space for something better, something truer, something that matters. The Sunrise Cafe still stands. The wellness centers continue growing. And every day, in small towns and big cities across America, someone else faces their own moment of choice. When it comes, I hope they remember. The ground only shakes for those brave enough to stand their ground. This is what honor looks like, not in medals or monuments, but in the daily decision to see each other's humanity and defend it fiercely. It's not always easy. It's rarely convenient. But it's always worth it. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I used to manage a cafe. Now I manage hope. And it all started the day I refused to throw out a Marine and his dog. The rest, as they say, is history. But it's a history still being written, one cup of coffee, one act of courage, one healed heart at a time.